Have you ever looked around and realized that despite the number of people in your life, your coworkers, your classmates, even your so-called best friends, you still feel alone? It's not just a passing feeling. It's the quiet voice in the back of your mind whispering, they wouldn't be here if you had nothing to offer. Carl Jung once said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But what happens when there is no transformation? When the presence of others does not change us, but empties us? In this first part, we're going to dismantle one of the most uncomfortable truths of modern life, that most friendships are not built on love or loyalty, but on usefulness. Think about it. How many of your relationships would survive if you lost your job, your looks, or your status? How many people would show up not because of what they gain from you, but because of who you truly are? The unsettling answer is very few. It's not because people are inherently evil. It's because they're conditioned. Conditioned by a culture that tells them to maximize gain, minimize effort, and associate only with what feels good. In such a world, your pain is inconvenient, your failure is contagious, and your vulnerability is unattractive. So what do people do? They keep a distance, they offer hollow support, they nod at your success but disappear at your collapse. Jung called this persona-based connection, relationships formed between masks, not souls. And when your mask cracks, when you cry, when you fail, when you stop entertaining, you become a mirror reflecting their own shadow. That's when they leave. Have you noticed how people vanish when you stop performing? When you no longer play the role they cast you in? It's not your fault. It's the cost of waking up. Because the moment you start living authentically, you stop being convenient. And convenience is what most people are addicted to. Not depth, not truth, not your essence. Let me ask you this. Have you ever gone through a dark time, mental illness, financial collapse, the loss of a loved one, and watched the room slowly empty? The texts stop. The invitations dry up. And suddenly, the people who once loved you can't even tolerate your silence. That's not friendship. That's exposure. You're not being abandoned. You're being shown what was never real. Jung believed that facing this truth is essential for individuation, the process of becoming whole. You cannot become yourself if you're still trying to be liked by people who only value your edited self. The moment you stop chasing approval, you start attracting truth. And sometimes, truth looks like loneliness. But here's the paradox. The very loneliness is where your soul begins to speak. Not the soul that wants followers or praise, but the soul that longs for depth, meaning, and alignment. And it only arrives when the crowd is gone. So what can you do with this realization? First, stop mistaking social closeness for emotional safety. Just because someone texts you daily doesn't mean they see you. Just because they laugh with you doesn't mean they would sit with you in silence. Second, be brave enough to face your own tendency to perform. Are you showing up as who you are or as who they want you to be? Because as long as you betray yourself to keep friends, you're not in friendships. You're in negotiations. And finally, ask yourself this painful but necessary question. If I lost everything, who would stay? That answer isn't just about them. It's about what kind of life you're building. A life built on masks or meaning. In the next part, we'll dive deeper into the psychological structures behind false friendships, why people prefer comfort over truth, and how Jung's concept of the shadow explains much more than just inner darkness. But before we go on, I want to ask you, has this ever happened to you? Have you ever outgrown a friendship, only to realize it was never rooted in love to begin with? Let me know in the comments. Let's start a real conversation. No masks, no performance, just truth. Have you ever noticed how people claim they want honesty, but run the moment you give it to them? They say, I want real friends. But what they really mean is, I want people who agree with me, praise me, and never challenge me. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He warned us that most people are not prepared to confront the truth, especially the truth about themselves. Why? Because it forces them to confront their shadow, the part of their psyche where they hide their insecurities, shame, envy, and fear. And nothing threatens a false friendship more than someone who mirrors that shadow back at them. Let's say you stop pretending. You stop being the cheerful one. You say what you really think. You reveal that you're struggling, questioning, breaking. Watch how fast the energy changes. The jokes stop. The group chat goes silent. You become too much. But you're not too much. You're just too real for a world that's addicted to comfort. And comfort is the silent killer of authenticity. Most friendships today are built on unspoken agreements. I'll play my role if you play yours. These roles are shaped by the expectations of others and maintained by silence. You pretend to be fine so they don't feel obligated. They pretend to care so they don't look heartless. And in between, your soul withers from neglect. This is what Jung meant when he said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Most relationships are spiritual avoidance rituals. Instead of facing what hurts, we distract ourselves with small talk, inside jokes, and surface-level bonding. We laugh together, but we never weep together. We share memes, but not pain. And so, we remain strangers, wearing familiar faces. Here's the brutal part. The more real you become, the more alone you might feel. Why? Because truth is magnetic, but only to those who are ready for it. Everyone else will call you negative, too intense, or not fun anymore. But their judgment isn't about you. It's about their fear of seeing themselves in your honesty. Let me give you a real-world example. A woman shares online about her depression, her burnout, her loss of identity. At first, people applaud her vulnerability. But when she keeps sharing, when her pain doesn't wrap up neatly, she notices her messages go unanswered. Her likes drop. People stop inviting her out. Why? Because she's no longer playing the part of the happy, polished, agreeable friend. She's become a mirror, and most people hate what they see in it. Or think about the man who sets boundaries after years of being the emotional caretaker in his circle. Suddenly he's called selfish, cold, changed. But what really changed? Not his heart, but his willingness to be used. Jung would say that these moments are not losses. They're revelations. They show you who was with you and who was only with your mask. So how do we navigate this? First, you must understand that discomfort is the gateway to depth. If someone can't sit with your truth, they were never ready to hold your soul. Let them go, not out of anger, but out of clarity. Second, replace the question, do they like me, with can they meet me where I am? Approval is cheap. Presence is priceless. Third, be what you seek. If you want truth, offer it. If you want depth, ask real questions. If you want loyalty, be loyal to your own soul first. You can't build genuine connection while abandoning yourself in the process. And finally, embrace the loneliness that may come, not as punishment, but as purification. You're not losing friends. You're shedding illusions. And what remains after that shedding is real. In the next part, we'll explore how false friendships damage your identity and how Jung's idea of projection explains why people often reject what they most need to see. But before we go on, have you ever been called too much for being honest, or lost friends after setting boundaries? Share your story below. You're not alone, and your truth deserves to be heard. Carl Jung once said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But most people never get that far, because before understanding comes resistance. And when that resistance becomes too strong, when your presence challenges their carefully curated identity, they'll do the only thing they know how to do, reject you. This is what Jung called projection, one of the most powerful and destructive psychological mechanisms. Here's how it works. When someone hasn't dealt with their own shadow, the parts of themselves they've denied, buried, or repressed, they unconsciously project those traits onto others. It's easier to call someone toxic than to admit you're avoiding your own truth. It's easier to blame your negative friend than to confront the emptiness in your own life. You become a scapegoat for their unresolved pain. And the more you evolve, the more it triggers people who haven't. You start setting boundaries. They call you cold. You become successful. They call you arrogant. You heal. They say you've changed, and not in a good way. But you haven't become worse. You've just stopped dimming your light to protect their comfort. Let me give you a scenario. A woman begins therapy. She starts speaking up, saying no, expressing her needs. Suddenly, her childhood friends, who once praised her for being so easygoing, start withdrawing. They say she's acting different. They mock her for being too sensitive. But what's really happening is this. Her growth highlights their stagnation. Her self-awareness reflects their self-denial. And instead of rising with her, they reject her. It's the crab in the bucket effect. One tries to climb out, the others pull them back in, not out of cruelty, but fear. Fear of being left behind, fear of confronting what they've refused to face. Now here's where it gets even more dangerous. Projection doesn't just distort how they see you, it starts to shape how you see yourself. If enough people call you selfish for having needs, you might begin to doubt your worth. If enough friends withdraw when you stop overgiving, you might question whether love always requires sacrifice. If enough people accuse you of being too deep, you might learn to hide your wisdom just to be liked. This is how the soul gets chipped away, not all at once, but slowly, through years of micro-abandonments. Until one day, you wake up and realize you've been performing a version of yourself just to stay connected. Jung warned us about this. He said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. In friendships, this means that unless you're aware of the roles you're playing and why, you'll keep attracting relationships that demand your silence in exchange for belonging. So how do you escape this? Start by reclaiming the narrative. If someone calls you cold for protecting your energy, translate that as, I'm no longer emotionally available for people who only take. If someone says you've changed, say I have. I grew tired of betraying myself. And most importantly, stop accepting projections as truth. Their discomfort is not your identity. Their withdrawal is not your failure. Their silence is not your unworthiness. You are not too much. You are just too honest for the illusion. In a world built on masks, truth-tellers will always be exiled first. But that exile isn't a punishment. It's an invitation to build something real, something sacred, a life where love doesn't require pretending. In the final part, we'll look at the loneliness that comes with awakening, and why Jung believed that this loneliness isn't emptiness, but a doorway to becoming whole. Before we move on, here's a question for you. Have you ever been projected onto, misunderstood, labeled, or judged for something that wasn't even yours? What did it teach you? Drop your story in the comments. Someone else needs to know they're not alone. Carl Jung believed that the most profound transformation begins in solitude, but not the kind of solitude that's quiet and peaceful, the kind that feels like exile, the kind that hurts. It begins the moment you realize you're no longer who you were, but you're not yet who you're becoming. You've outgrown your environment, your relationships, your identity, but the new one hasn't taken form yet. And in this strange, sacred in-between, people start to fall away. Some leave quietly, others betray you in ways you never imagined. But almost always, their exit feels violent, not because of how they leave, but because of what it reveals, that the connection wasn't built on who you are, it was built on who you were willing to pretend to be. And when you stop pretending, the friendship dies. That's when it hits you. No one is coming to save you. No one is responsible for understanding you. No one owes you loyalty just because you were loyal. You learn that truth-telling is expensive. Authenticity is lonely. Growth is isolating. But Jung didn't see this as a tragedy. He saw it as initiation. He once said, loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. It's not about being alone. It's about being unseen. And yet, this very loneliness is what awakens your soul. Because when you're finally stripped of distraction, when the applause fades, when the roles collapse, you meet the one person who was always there, yourself. And in that meeting, something incredible happens. You stop seeking love as validation and start discovering love as presence. You stop begging for belonging and begin creating it. You stop performing and begin being. This is where true power is born. You learn to sit with your pain without numbing it. You learn to trust your intuition when it says this isn't safe. You learn that silence is not emptiness, it's clarity. And most importantly, you learn that some friendships aren't meant to last forever. They were seasonal teachers, not soulmates. Lessons in boundaries, not homes to stay in. Once you accept this, everything shifts. You no longer chase people who misunderstand you. You bless them and let them go. You no longer sacrifice your peace for proximity. You choose energy over history. And you no longer fear being misunderstood because you finally understood yourself. Here's the paradox Jung pointed out. The more whole you become, the fewer people can walk with you. Because most people don't want whole. They want agreeable. They want predictable. They want someone who reflects back the version of themselves they can tolerate. But your soul was never meant to be a mirror for someone else's comfort. It was meant to be a light. And lights don't beg to be seen. They shine. So if you're in this place right now, if the loneliness is loud and the room feels colder than you expected, I want you to hear this. You are not broken. You are being reborn. What you're grieving is not just lost friendships. It's the version of you that needed them. You're shedding the skin of conformity, of apology, of please like me. And what's coming next? It's connection that doesn't require translation, love that doesn't demand explanation, friendship that doesn't punish your truth. But first, you must become the kind of person you were always afraid to be, fully alive, even if it means being misunderstood. So I'll leave you with this. Stop shrinking to fit into expired spaces. Stop watering down your wisdom so others feel safe. Stop performing pain so they don't feel guilty. And start trusting that the people who are meant for you, your real tribe, will recognize you not because you dimmed yourself, but because you finally lit up. You'll never look at friendship the same again, and that's not something to mourn. It's something to celebrate. Welcome to your becoming.